Alright everyone, yesterday Dan Bongino was banned off of YouTube. There's a reason that I'm making this a main and putting it on YouTube, because then I can say link in the description and in a pinned comment down below directly to my Rumble channel. Approaching 62,000 subscribers there. That was pretty quick. The viewership and engagement is definitely on the upswing. I think I gained 300 subscribers yesterday. I used to be able to do that on YouTube. Then YouTube decided to fuck its own site algorithmically, and this is just another symptom of how old tech is steadily alienating more and more people. You've had, over and over again, mainline commentators. Bongino is not an extremist. He's not so far out there that he's in La La Land. He's a mainline commentator, sometimes funny, sometimes informative, whatever. YouTube thinks it's somehow a win to ban him off the platform, and this is a big problem strategically. He's got 2 million plus fucking subscribers on Rumble versus the under million that he had on YouTube. Still a large channel, still getting up towards 1 million, but he'd been throttled by the algorithms the same way I am and the same way most of you are. If you make content at all, you've noticed over the last couple of years, especially over the last year roughly, that YouTube is no longer really about broadcast yourself. It's about on-demand style priority services and being a jukebox, and everything else is sort of coincidental. The people that made the site great, that actually make the most interesting content, are repeatedly buried in the algorithm, whether it's related videos, search, or anything else. And that's become a problem. Bongino has twice as many people following him on Rumble, is invested into Rumble, quite literally, is gleeful at this because now some of his fans who were mainly watching him on YouTube, they're not going to watch him there anymore. All the core fans that weren't already using Rumble are going to move to Rumble, at least partially, at least for Bongino. Well, I mean, considering his audience size, that could be many tens, maybe even over 100,000 people. Doing this to one person is not how you fuck your site. Certainly not when you have hundreds of millions of active users like YouTube does. Doing it over and over to a number of people is generally not a good idea. There aren't many people in the younger generations that give a fucking shit what MSNBC and Fox News say. But they do care about Bongino. They care about Cullen or Paul Joseph Watson. They watch Sargon. They watch me in some cases, Alex Jones. There's a laundry list of people who have been banned off of one or more big tech platforms, and I'll tell you what. I'll tell you why I'm glad to have a reasonable foothold on Rumble. You know, at the rate it's growing, I would be surprised if I didn't have over 100,000 people following me there by the end of the year. Here's why. Every time this happens, that trickles down to other people. It's sort of like the reverse of what happened on Patreon. Creator's perspective here. Sargon of Akkad is making material on YouTube and he's getting Patreon donations. This is years ago. Patreon says he sent a DM to a white supremacist talking about, actually that was a different story. He gets banned off Patreon because he used the N-word in an entirely satirical context, replying privately or semi-privately to people who are white supremacists, mocking them. Patreon decided, well, you're not allowed to do that. It's, even though it's off-site behavior, they added that to their TOS. We're kicking you off. In my case, I suddenly lost almost half of my Patreon revenue. That's because of audience overlap. Likewise, my assumption is that people like me have audience overlap with Bongino. Well, that means that when those people go to Rumble, it's not just Bongino that they're following. They're going to find all the other favorite people that were ever banned on Rumble as well. There's another reason that I'm glad to be there. Rumble is partnered with Truth Social, which is going to go live next month. I know what some of you will say, well, they've said that they'll have AI moderation. Their TOS talk about hate speech. It's exactly the same as YouTube was before the latest round of purges and censorship. That is pre-2016 YouTube. The terms of service are fundamentally the same. Only the functionality is greater because, of course, it's no longer fucking 2016 anymore. You've had a number of years to advance the usability of websites. YouTube suddenly somehow has not become more usable in that period. They've been too busy banning people. The innovation stopped and the censorship began. Rumble doesn't have that problem. The biggest censorship problems on YouTube are with regards to what Bongino was banned for, which is medical misinformation, whatever the fuck that means. The TOS are deliberately vague so that they can use differential enforcement to protect priority creators under those same TOS, even if they're spreading misinfo, while butchering people like me or Bongino on the platform. And the other is political disinformation, or things that are about the last election you're not allowed to talk about. Well, I mean, I gotta tell you this, to the pessimists out there. Truth Social's not going to be full of groypers. It's not going to be full of Pepe meme. What it will be full of is probably tens of millions of Trump fans and extended populist support from all around the world. Most of these people have probably never heard of Rumble, because most of them probably still use Facebook. When they get on Truth Social, they're going to find that it's partnered with a very helpful video site called Rumble that really resembles YouTube and is boomer friendly. The site's going to double in size very quickly. That's my opinion. That's my theory on what happens. Well, for those of us that are getting established on the platform, it's good times now, isn't it? It's much like I'm glad that I'm on BitChute. It started absorbing larger creators who went there when they were banned on other sites, and all of a sudden it affected my growth too in a very positive way. The same is true of Odyssey. The same has been true of Minds. When I first joined Subscribestar, I wasn't making that much money. I'm now making more than $2,000 a month in donations on Subscribestar, partially because every time someone's alienated off of Patreon or some similar service, GoFundMe fucking itself in the ass, they find out about this wonderful site called Subscribestar. It's more functional than Patreon, although it takes a slightly bigger cut of the proceeds. It's natural since it's smaller, but it's got additional functionality and it won't ban you unless you're doing something illegal or trying to raise money for like porn or something. For that, there's OnlyFans. Come on. Bongino does not care that YouTube banned him. Anyway, what was the misinfo? I would be very, very interested in learning specifically what he was talking about before he got banned. He got a temporary ban before, and he came out and he openly proclaimed, I'm not going to use YouTube anymore. I got twice as many people following me on this other site. Here's the thing. Sometimes leftoids will be like, oh good, you should silence the misinfo peddlers. Ha ha, take the L. Oh ha ha, now he's been disappeared. That hasn't happened. Alex Jones was blanket banned on all of big tech, payment process and everything else as well. Half a fucking decade ago at this point almost. He's still there. He's still well known. He's still milling around with the same people. He's still pulling in 6- and 7-figure audience totals cross-platform when you put them all together. He ain't gone nowhere. They talk about, Alex Jones had to lay off a couple of his staff. He's doomed now. What happened to Vox and Salon and Huffington Post and literally the entire rest of the legacy media? The New York Times had to lay off half its editorial staff a few years ago. That's because of their own fault. They don't do journalism anymore. Yeah, you think that you might marginally inconvenience Alex Jones or Dan Bongino when you ban them off of mainline tech, so that they're reaching temporarily less people. The people that are in the know, that are tech literate, specifically younger, they're all fleeing to new tech. Or they're assholes. They're using TikTok. Well, I don't think the average person that really is addicted to TikTok is interested in political commentary anyway, so that's no real loss. I liked how the other day one of the leftoids replied by saying, well, Rumble has 1.4% the users of YouTube. Haha, Dan takes the L. That's up from much less than 1% of YouTube's user base very, very short time ago. This is the sort of technological inversion that actually happened yesteryear in the dot-com era and the early social media era quite frequently. You become big, you become almost hegemonic. YouTube is synonymous with uploading videos. But you make too many mistakes, alienate too many people or the wrong people, and all of a sudden you end up entering a death spiral because the growth ceases. It's the Sears. Sears was once on top of the world. Look at the former Sears Tower in Chicago, for example, if you want a symbolic idea of their power at their height. They don't exist anymore. They had thousands and thousands of stores. They were up there with Walmart, but they made too many mistakes in investing in their locations, in the merch that was offered. Getting on, I think, too late into the social media realm didn't help them. They tried to gobble up, didn't they try to gobble up Kmart for a while? And so they had them, and now they're under too. By the way, gutting the Rutland Mall, it no longer exists. Physical structure is there. It's empty. It's one of those ghost malls you've heard about in my hometown in Rutland. YouTube should not have banned him. It shouldn't have a medical disinfo policy. There's no point to it at this point, number one. Number two, it's alienating large numbers of users because when you start going from, hey, years ago they were like, well, we're combating extremism. It's a real stretch to say that a person's medical opinions with regards to some experimental therapeutic has to do with extremism. Have you ever watched Dallas Buyers Club? I don't think that history is going to smile upon the people that are taking up the jackboot position on COVID. To be clear, this has happened before. Fauci was involved in that pandemic too, and he was consistently wrong too throughout the entirety of that pandemic. There's a famous clip of him saying that, oh yeah, AIDS can probably be transmitted by casual contact. That was at the dawn of it when they were worried that it was literally the next plague and going to kill everybody. Thankfully, that turned out not to be the case. Bongino's laughing. I'm laughing too. You know, some of my YouTube fans might decide in anger. They're really big Bongino fans. They leave YouTube. But they're still on Rumble, probably. Well, guess who's there? It's almost like branching out's a good idea. I keep looking at these other content creators just to close up here. I'm in a little bit of a heavily caffeinated rant mood today. Some of you like it, some of you don't. So bear with me. I've still got to make my fucking exclusives, too. I see so many creators. There's so much talent. People that I love to watch. They're edgy, and they run up against the edge of TOS. Sometimes they get stuff demonetized, restricted, even taken down, and they don't even tell everybody about all the other sites that they're using. Oh my goodness, what a terrible, terrible, tragic mistake you're making. Says it's so tragic. Almost all of them, too. I'm not even going to use names because it'd be too many names to point out. I'd rather point out the ones that have actually branched out, made exclusive content. You should be doing it every single day. There's no reason not to. Be a workhorse. Make interesting shit. Get people onto new tech, and we won't have this fucking issue. Once you have enough competition, you don't even need, by the way, Rumble to become the next YouTube, become big, or BitChute or something. You don't need that. All you need to do is have a hefty enough amount of competition. Well, these sites are already edging in on that territory. How many millions of users do you need before you're a mainline site? Not that many. Rumble surpassed 30 million active users as of the beginning of this year. That's up from a couple million at the end of last year. That's rather large growth than getting evaluated at, I think, over $1 billion worth of value. No, that's nothing. It's totally, YouTube should just do whatever it wants. It'll be on top forever. Thus saith Sears, thus saith the Romans, thus saith every country that ever rose to prominence, every business that ever rose to prominence, and virtually all of them are gone. Those that aren't gone are a vestige of their former self. Yeah, there's still an Egypt. There's still a Greece. They're not empires. Egypt being at least closer to being a power. It's not an empire. Yeah, Rome's still there, the eternal city. It's all in ruins. There you go. Someday, unfortunately, that'll happen to the U.S. I don't think it'll happen this century, though. That's about all. Peace out.